The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked pavement outside Miller's Corner store in a quiet suburb of San Diego. Most people hurried past without a second glance at the man sitting against the brick wall. His clothes were worn and dusty. His beard was unkempt. A faded military jacket hung loose on his shoulders. To anyone passing by, he looked like just another forgotten soul that life had left behind. But sometimes the people we overlook are the ones with the most extraordinary stories. And sometimes the cruelest moments can become the most beautiful lessons in humanity. 17-year-old Blake Hensley laughed as he elbowed his friend Connor. The two of them had just left the store with energy drinks and bags of chips. Blake's phone was out and he was filming everything like he always did. His social media was full of pranks and jokes that got thousands of views. He lived for the attention and the validation that came with every like and share. "Look at this guy," Connor said, nodding toward the man on the ground. Blake turned his camera toward him and grinned. The man sat quietly with his eyes half closed. A small cardboard sign rested beside him, but the words were too faded to read clearly. Blake walked closer with Connor trailing behind. "Hey buddy," Blake said loudly, "you planning on getting a job anytime soon or just gonna sit there all day?" The man didn't respond. He simply shifted slightly and kept his gaze down. Connor snickered and pulled out his own phone. "This is gonna be hilarious," he muttered. Blake crouched down in front of the man, making sure his face was in the frame. "What's wrong, man? Can't afford a shower. Maybe if you actually worked instead of begging, you wouldn't be such a mess." Still the man said nothing. His jaw tightened just slightly, but he didn't look up. Blake's confidence grew. He stood and kicked at the man's outstretched legs, not hard, but enough to be disrespectful. "Come on, say something. Tell us your sob story. Let me guess, you made bad choices and now you want everyone else to fix your life." Connor zoomed in with his camera, laughing. "Dude, this is gold. Your followers are going to eat this up." But then a voice cut through the air like a blade. "That's enough." Blake turned around and saw a woman in her mid-30s standing near the store entrance. Her arms were crossed and her expression was a mixture of shock and anger. Her name was Rachel Cummings, and she was a high school teacher who had stopped to grab groceries after a long day. She had watched the entire scene unfold, and every second of it made her blood boil. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked, walking toward them. Blake shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just having some fun, lady." "Relax. Fun." Rachel's voice rose. "You think humiliating someone is fun? Do you have any idea who this man is? What he might have been through?" Blake rolled his eyes. "He's probably just some addict who messed up his own life. Why should we care?" Rachel's face flushed with frustration. "Because he's a human being. Because kindness costs you nothing. And because one day you might need someone to show you the same grace you're refusing to give him." Connor shifted uncomfortably and muttered something about leaving. But Blake wasn't ready to back down. "Whatever," he said dismissively. "We were just joking around. It's not that deep." Rachel pulled out her phone. "Then you won't mind if I share your little joke with the world, right? Let's see how funny people think it is when they know your names and your faces." Blake's smirk faded. He glanced at Connor, who suddenly looked nervous. Without another word, the two of them turned and walked away, muttering under their breath. Rachel watched them go, then turned her attention to the man still sitting quietly against the wall. She knelt down beside him. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "Are you okay?" The man finally looked up. His eyes were a deep blue, tired but clear. He nodded slowly. "I'm fine, ma'am. But thank you." Rachel noticed something then. Despite the rough exterior, despite the worn clothes, there was something about him that didn't quite fit. The way he held himself. The calm in his voice. The quiet strength in his gaze. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she felt it. "Can I get you something?" she asked. "Water, food?" He shook his head gently. "I appreciate it, but I'm all right." "Really?" She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "Please," she said. "Take it. Get yourself something to eat." He looked at the money for a long moment, then took it with a nod. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Rachel smiled. "We should all look out for each other. That's what makes us human." She stood and walked back toward her car, feeling both sad and angry. Sad for the man who had been treated so cruelly. Angry at the boys who thought cruelty was entertainment. She sat in her car for a moment, staring at the steering wheel and wondering what kind of world allowed that kind of behavior to go unchecked. But across the street, something else was happening. A black SUV had pulled into the parking lot. 4 men stepped out. They were all in their 30s and 40s. They wore civilian clothes, but they moved with a precision and awareness that set them apart. They weren't just walking. They were scanning, observing, assessing. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a calm intensity in his eyes, spotted the man sitting against the wall. His face broke into a grin. He turned to the others. That's him. The four men crossed the parking lot with purpose. When they reached the man on the ground, they stopped, and one of them extended a hand. The man looked up, and for the first time that afternoon, a genuine smile spread across his face. He gripped the hand and was pulled to his feet. The men surrounded him, laughing and clapping him on the back like they were reuniting with a long-lost brother. Because they were. The man's name was Ethan Briggs. He wasn't homeless. He was a retired Navy SEAL. For the past 3 weeks, he had been living on the streets by choice as part of a personal challenge. He wanted to understand what it felt like to be invisible, to be overlooked, to be judged. He had served his country for over a decade. He had led missions in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. But now he wanted to see the world from a different perspective. He wanted to understand the people society had forgotten, and he had learned more than he ever expected. His former teammates had known about his project. They had stayed in touch and had agreed to meet him today. But when they arrived and saw him, they also saw Rachel still sitting in her car watching. One of the men, a wary guy with sharp eyes named Luis, walked over and tapped on her window. Rachel rolled it down cautiously.
Yes.
Luis smiled. We just wanted to say thank you for standing up for our friend back there. Rachel blinked in confusion. Luis nodded toward Ethan, who was now standing tall, brushing the dust off his jacket. That guy you defended. He's one of the best men we've ever known. Retired SEAL, Purple Heart recipient. Saved more lives than we can count. He's been out here by choice, trying to understand what it's like to be forgotten. Rachel's eyes widened. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a respectful nod. I had no idea, she whispered. Most people don't, Luis said. And that's the point. You didn't know who he was, but you still stood up for him. You saw a human being who deserved dignity. That says everything about you. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. She stepped out of her car and walked over to Ethan. I'm sorry, she said. I wish more people had done the same. Ethan shook his head. Don't apologize. What you did today mattered. You reminded me that there's still good in this world. One of the other men, a tall guy named Carter, spoke up. Those kids who were messing with you, we got their faces on camera. We're not going to blast them online or anything. But maybe we can find them and teach them a better lesson. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. I think I know where they go to school. And that's exactly what happened. 3 days later, Blake and Connor were called into the principal's office. Sitting there waiting for them were Ethan and Rachel, along with the principal and a police liaison who worked with local youth programs. Blake's stomach dropped. Connor looked like he wanted to disappear. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He simply told his story. He explained what it was like to serve, to sacrifice, to come home and see people struggling and feel helpless to fix it. He talked about the men and women he had served with, some of whom had come home and fallen through the cracks. He explained why he had spent those weeks on the street and what he had learned about empathy and humanity. By the end, both boys were crying. Blake looked at Ethan with red eyes and said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Ethan's voice was steady but kind. You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to see me as a person. That's the lesson. The boys were assigned community service at a local veterans shelter. Over the following months, they worked alongside men and women who had served their country. They heard stories of courage and loss. They learned names and faces and histories. And slowly they began to change. Blake deleted his old videos. He stopped chasing likes and started chasing purpose. Connor volunteered at a food bank. And Rachel continued to teach, not just in her classroom, but in every interaction, reminding people that kindness is never wasted. Ethan returned to his normal life, but he never forgot those weeks. And neither did the people whose lives he touched. Because sometimes the most powerful act of heroism isn't charging into battle. It's standing up for someone when no one else will. It's seeing the invisible. It's choosing compassion over cruelty. And it's remembering that every single person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. Because in a world that can often feel cold and harsh, your kindness might be the light that someone desperately needs. Thank you for watching, and remember, always choose kindness.